I submitted 7 bills. And my no-brainers turned out to be the most difficult to get forward. My first no-brainer was LB 247. It was to allow 100% disabled veterans who had the plates. Now, if you've seen some of the plates, Nebraska plates, but they have a little DAV at the bottom. Those plates go to 100% disabled veterans. And there are only 3,340 in the whole state of Nebraska, and not that many. So my thought was, and other states have done this, is allow those people with those plates to park in handicapped parking spots. Now, they aren't necessarily mobility issues for those. They may be hearing, it may be eyesight, it may be a lot of things where they get to 100% disability. But I thought, service to the country, they made this sacrifice, let's let them park a little closer to the front of the building, and a no-brainer. It wouldn't cost us a dime, because the plates are already issued. We didn't have to do a new plate, we wouldn't have to do all that. And I got 25 senators to co-sponsor with me, so it's going to be a slam dunk. And unfortunately, the veterans organizations came in and said, we don't like it. So we pulled it back. Now, the reason they didn't like it was, well, first of all, a lot of them do have mobility issues, and they're concerned about the 3,300 taking up some spots. Now, I would tell you that there are 14,000 people with handicapped parking spots or placards, and so this population would represent less than 1%. But still, particularly the paralyzed veterans rolled in and really didn't like it, and so how can you take forward a bill for veterans that the veterans don't want? So we pulled it back. We're going to work on it over the summer. We may have to come up with another license plate with a handicap logo on it to get the veterans organizations to accept it and get it moving forward. So that was my first bill. My second bill, 457, has to do with election security, and this really came out of 2020 elections. We all know about that. There's a lot of questions. So this has 2 features in it. First, it has to do with the ballots to make them less counterfeitable. Is that a term? It would require watermarks and some other features that would make it hard to just duplicate ballots. So that would help with some of the mail-out ballots from people counterfeiting those and then submitting them. So that's part of it. The other part is cameras and the polling places. So probably 2 cameras at every polling place has a complete view of the area from the time the ballot is issued until it's put back into the secure box. That would all be under view. And that would be covered by the state. So I really didn't want an unfunded mandate going down to the counties and making them buy all these cameras. So that was a part of the bill, and it's a significant bill. It's in the tens of millions of dollars to be able to fund all of that. And right now it is with the government committee, because the government committee has everything to do with elections. They cover all that. They heard, I think, 4 bills that have to do with election security. Colonel Brewer is working right now to try and combine those into a single bill. He must pass voter ID, okay? Because voter ID was a ballot initiative in the last election. So the people of Nebraska said, we want voter ID. So there has to be a bill passed this year by the unicameral that covers voter ID. So that's probably his biggest headache right now, is coming to agreement on that, but he's going to try and fold in some of these other election security pieces into that. So that has potential. It has no priority. My third bill is LB 480. Excuse me. It's has to do with medical liens. So if you get in an automobile accident and you're not at fault, and the other insurance company gives you a check, a payout, under current statute now, any hospital that gave you service, doctor, nurse, chiropractor is actually listed in there, can put a lien against that payout so they can get reimbursed for the services they provide. The fireman and the EMT who helped you out cannot. And so the city has to pick up that bill. So then my amendment, my change would add them to the list of the people who can put a lien against that payout. And that is still in judiciary, which is my committee, but we're working to try to get it attached to one of these omnibus bills. There's no fiscal note with it. You're just adding, the language to the statute, so it has a good chance of getting advanced. Probably my most important bill, I think, personally, is LB 580, and it is a speaker priority. And what this does is tries to undo some of the unintended consequences from the annexation that Gretna did back in 2017. So back in 2017, Gretna, looking out to the future, says, I need this land, and at the same time, Papillion is looking out and saying, I need this land. So Gretna went first, and Gretna annexed 3,000 acres, and saying this is now city limits, okay? 3,000 acres is now city limits. Well, the unintended consequence of that is if you're ag land, and ag land gets special taxation, 78% of the base, if you're inside city limits, you don't qualify. So there are 880 acres of that 3,000 that was farmland that was getting special taxation, and all of a sudden they're not, and their valuation went up in the hundreds of millions, and so now, and one of them, and the real reason we're bringing this is Vala's pumpkin patch. 300 acres of that was Vala's pumpkin patch. So that's not really the main reason we're bringing it, but he testified and he explained what he'd have to do if he has to pay this increased levy on his increased taxation. So we're bringing this forward, and let's see, that one went to the Revenue Committee, and again, it has no fiscal note. It's not costing anybody anything. It's reduced revenue for the county, but even the county assessors came in and says, I mean, it's the right thing to do. And so that, I think that has a good chance. It's already been advanced to select file. Everyone thinks it's a great idea, so it should work. It should come out that way. My next bill, LB 590, and this is it's not really applicable here because I don't think there are any Medicaid residents at this facility. This is a pay-as-you-go, not qualified for Medicaid. But if you understand, if you get really, really poor in your older age and you need to move into a nursing facility or an assisted living facility, and you have less than $4,000 in assets, that's what it takes to qualify for Medicaid in the state of Nebraska. Less than $4,000 in assets. And what the state then does is it comes in and takes your Social Security, takes any pension, takes any 401k or anything that you have in assets. Of course, it's less than $4,000, but they take all of that, but they will pay. They'll put you in an assisted living facility, and they will pay for your room and board and medication for the rest of your life. You don't have to worry about that. You have a place to live, a place that you can get food, and the state will give you $60 a month for personal needs. $60. And it's been that way since 2015. So my bill would raise that from $60 to $100 a month. Unfortunately, the committee thought that's too much, and the bill was about $40 million. So they cut it back to 75. So it would be an increase from $60 to $75, and it is part of the HHS, the Health and Human Services Committee priority bill. And everyone thinks it's a good idea. It does have a fiscal note, but they think it's a good idea. So that looks good. I don't have my personal priority, and I don't have the number here.
769.
769, there you go, Dan knows. My priority bill has to do with the sewer system in South Sarpy County. Sarpy County, believe it or not, is the smallest county by area in the state of Nebraska. But it has the third largest population by county in the state of Nebraska. And only 40% of it is developable because of the ridge. So the ridge runs from like Gretna down south of Bellevue, and on the south side of that, on the downhill side of that, there's no wastewater treatment. There's no sewer plant, there's no nothing, so you can't develop that land down there. Many years ago, the county and the cities formed an interlocal organization, tremendous cooperation among these groups, unseen across Nebraska. It's the only one. And they formed up this group to try and solve the wastewater treatment issues for Sarpy County. And initially, the thought was, well, let's put a treatment plant down south of the ridge. And they were started moving out in that direction. And then Omaha came in and said, well, use our plant. We have excess access. And so, and they ran the numbers, and the numbers came out, it would be cheaper just to run a pipeline from essentially South Sarpy County over the ridge and pump it into the sewer treatment plant, which is actually south of Bellevue. It's Omaha's treatment plant, but it's actually south of Bellevue. And so we're moving out on that. And initially, it wasn't going to cost. We were going to cover the cost with sewer hookup fees and development costs. And then and it's about, well, how far along are we? We're almost half done. I think this fall we'll be about half done with it. But there's a section in the middle, very, very important part, that is currently not under contract. And because of the increase in prices over the last 2 years, it came up about $60 million short. So, I mean, there are other plans to do this, but the easiest solution was just to get the state to chip in the $60 million, and that's what my bill would have done. It went to Natural Resources, which is packed with Western Nebraska senators who think, why should I give money to Sarpy County? It's the third largest as far as population goes. Why am I doing money for that? And but the benefit, the convincer is, it will open 97,000 taxable properties and will return $47 billion to the state of Nebraska in increased income tax and sales tax over the next 30 years. So it's an investment. It's not really, bailing out Sarpy County. It is an investment in Nebraska's future. And they said, okay, how about 15? So right now the bill is at 15. That'd be enough for us to be able to cover a loan. So we wouldn't have to increase property taxes, and all this is being worked at the county level. But that's my bill, and it is currently, where is that bill? That bill is actually being worked into a development bill that Senator McKinney has for eastern Omaha. It's not North and South Omaha anymore. Now it's East Omaha. So there's development. There's a development bill for funding of East Omaha development, and Sarpy County is going to be able to get $15 million out of that. It's in the hundreds of millions of dollars that they're doing, and we're just able to get 15 to cover this. Yeah. Again, it's going to be one of the omnibus bills, but it has a good chance, and it is my priority bill, so that should work. My last bill, sorry, I took longer than I thought I was going to on this, but has to do with ESG. If you're familiar with ESG, it's environmental, social governance. It's doing things like penalizing farmers for methane emissions from their yards, from their feed lots. And my bill was focused on banks, that banks could not use ESG criteria in consideration for providing financial services, loans, whatever the banks were doing. Banks came back heavy against that idea, really heavy. So we pulled it back, and we're going to do an internal study this summer and try to bring it back next year to see what we can get with agreement with the banks. So those are my 7 bills and where they stand. And Senator Arch wanted me to emphasize that we made significant progress on the finance bills, on the tax bills. We've advanced 2 tax bills to select, and the governor's budget will be coming. So we talked about the governor's budget is really about 8 bills, okay, and they all have to do with different things, and we've really only talked about one of them so far. It has to do with education. So the thought process, and this is really a bunch of gears that have to mesh up, but the thought is right now we have $2.3 billion in the rainy day fund. 4 years ago, that rainy day fund was $300 million. So we've gone in our rainy day fund from $300 million to $2.3 billion. And we want to take that money and turn it into property tax relief. Now, unfortunately, you can't just move it. you think you could, but you can't. So if you look at your property taxes, property tax is assessed, collected, and spent at the local level. The state has nothing to do with property tax. We don't set it, we don't assess it, we don't collect money for it, we don't pay for it, we don't pay for any of the services that property taxes do, education, police, fire, all the things that property tax does. So that's, in particular, education is the issue. Because if you look at your property tax statement every year, about 50 to 65% of it goes towards education. K to 12, community colleges, education. And so, how do you solve that? Well, if you look at the national things, Nebraska ranks 49th as far as state aid to education. Why? It's not because we're in the middle as far as overall funding of education, but we're 49th for state funding of education because all the funding is done by the county levels through their assessments, 65% of property tax. So how do we're going to take that money, $1 billion of that $2.3 billion, the governor's going to put it into a foundation, and he's going to, over the next 3 years, he's going to pay out about $330 to $350 million dollars, $330 million and to the public schools. Okay, and what we are asking then the public schools, will take that money, they'll reduce their levies, because they don't need as much money anymore to pay for the price, because the state, it will now be about 27th in the nation for providing state funding to schools, and they'll reduce their levies. Now to try and enforce that a bit, there's another bill, and this is where all these bills kind of come together. Senator Breezy has this bill, he puts a cap on how much the school districts can raise their budgets. It's 3%. And it's a soft cap. It can be overridden by the county board. Well, I'm sorry, not the county board, by the school board with a 60%, I think, vote, or by the people, I think, with a 51% vote. But that's the idea. So we're going to take this rainy day fund, we're going to apply it to education. Education will then reduce the levy, which will reduce the property tax. So hopefully it's all going to work over the next 3 years. And the governor has not done this in a vacuum. He formed a group as soon as he got elected back in November. In December, he formed up a group of school board members and legislators and a whole bunch of folks to try to come up with this plan. And now that is making progress. I think both those bills are in select file right now. So we are making progress. It's taking a long time, longer than most of us would like, but I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to do good this year. And if we don't, we'll do it again next year.